Welcome back, everyone, to another explainer. Today, we're putting on our historical investigator hats because we are about to deconstruct a major historical illusion, one that managed to fool the entire world. We're looking at a period in modern history that's often misunderstood, surrounded by myths, and frankly, just fascinating to untangle. We're going to examine the stark contrast between the spectacular surface and the really precarious realities operating underneath.
So what if I told you that one of history's greatest economic recoveries was actually built on an illusion? It's a pretty dramatic thought, right? When we look back at the historical record, we usually just accept this surface-level narrative of a miraculous economic turnaround. But as we're about to see, the reality is far more complicated and honestly a lot more toxic than the myth suggests. To understand this, we first have to set the stage. Section 1, Germany in ruins. Let's move through this timeline and see how this builds. Starting in the early 1920s, we're looking at a nation literally and economically in ruins following World War I. Then we hit 1923, a critical breaking point where hyperinflation completely destroyed the currency. Imagine a time so economically desperate that families were literally taking wheelbarrows full of cash to the bakery just to buy a single loaf of bread. By the late 1920s, the economic abyss was so deep and millions were so thoroughly unemployed that a widespread belief took hold. Germany would simply never recover. It felt completely impossible. And it's within this exact climate of total economic despair that we reach our fourth point, 1933, when Adolf Hitler rises to power.
And that brings us directly to the apparent turnaround. Section 2, the economic miracle illusion.
Within just a few short years of that 1933 transition of power, the visible metrics completely flipped. Unemployment plummets from millions to almost zero. Factories that had been shuttered and left to rust during the darkest days of the 1920s suddenly reopened their doors, operating at full capacity. And perhaps most visibly, Germany rapidly rebuilt one of Europe's most powerful militaries, seemingly overnight. To the outside world, watching all this from afar, it genuinely looked like an absolute economic miracle had taken place. The sheer speed of these visible successes convinced a lot of international observers that a true, stable recovery was happening. Okay, let's dive into this, because of course, there's always more to the story. Section 3, the hidden truth. Right here is where the illusion fractures. While the public celebrated the outward appearance, the falling unemployment, the booming factories, a highly toxic reality was brewing underneath. Understanding this dichotomy, this massive gap between the gleaming public facade and the complex financial mechanics operating in the shadows is absolutely crucial to grasping this era. The outward appearance of strength was actively hiding an entirely different reality. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we mean. Behind that remarkable recovery was a labyrinth of complex, hidden finances. This wasn't a standard economic boom at all. It was propped up by massive, off-the-books government debt kept entirely hidden from the public through the use of phantom shell companies. And this massive financial maneuvering was largely being funneled into one primary area: aggressive military spending. They weren't building a robust, self-sustaining economy. They were building an incredibly fragile house of cards. Which naturally leads us to our final analytical phase, Section 4, destined to collapse. This brings us to a highly provocative question raised by our source material. Was Hitler truly an economic genius? It's a question that directly challenges all those long-held assumptions created by that surface-level miracle we discussed earlier.
So, the crucial point is this. To answer that question, we have to look at the foundation of the system itself and its fatal flaw. The economy depended on constant, aggressive expansion to survive. Because of the astronomical hidden debt and massive military spending, the system literally could not sustain itself in a state of peace. It was fundamentally designed in a way that required continuous outward growth just to stay afloat. It was basically a ticking time bomb built right into the very architecture of their financial strategy.
Separating the myth of the miracle from reality requires us to look neutrally at these three pillars. When you analyze the underlying economic strategies, the political decisions that prioritized guns and military might over long-term stability, and those massive hidden risks taken just to maintain the illusion, well, history looks very different. It really teaches us to always look deeper than the surface metrics, because those visible numbers rarely tell the whole story. Which leaves us with this final pivotal thought. Was Nazi Germany's recovery built on a system that was destined to collapse from the very beginning? When you peel back the layers, the falling unemployment, the reopened factories, and expose the hidden debt and the absolute reliance on constant expansion, It completely shifts your perspective, doesn't it? It changes the narrative from one of awe to a realization of profound systemic fragility. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. I hope this sparks your curiosity and leaves you hungry to investigate even more of history's hidden truths.